Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to another special edition of Thrush and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast where musical angels battle it out every week against the devils of metal. And speaking of week, I'm Aaron. Oh, and if this guy isn't coconutting a Lamington, he's tenderizing his muffins because he's Evan, the metal man. How's it going?
Hey, how you going?
Yeah, good, thank you. How was your week?
Busy. Oh,
Busy?
yeah. Hardcore.
Again. Anyways. Guess what?
What?
We have another West End diva in the studio today, and he's here to make me feel utterly inadequate because this leading Lothario is a painfully talented actor, singer, writer, composer, and highly skilled skier whose stints in the Phantom of the Opera left the ladies saying "row," as well as unmasking a stellar career that has seen him make it count as Carl Magnus in A Little Night Music, where he heard the sound of music as Rolf, which helped him reminisce about the last 5 years, and that no doubt gave him that sinking feeling for his role in Titanic the Musical, before trying on his Aussie accent, Struth Elsa, for On the Town at the Royal Albert Hall for the BBC Proms. And yet he somehow agreed to come on this show. Which is awesome and not at all intimidating. With dashing good looks and a unique voice as a writer and composer of two groundbreaking Middle Easterly musicals, The Wing-Breaking Broken Wings, plus today's breakout chosen musical with his collaborator Dana Al-Fadan, this artist's personality shines through, making him one of the hottest, as in the most sought after, talents on the West End, and one of the tastiest after his acclaimed role of potential meat pie Anthony in Sweeney Todd. So please give the warmest, most Aussiest g'day to the hottest superstar, as in the most prettiest, to come out of the West End since, well, the last hottie superstar we had on this show. Shout out to Hadley. Men want to be him, women want to be with him, and children want to yodel like him. It's Nadim Naman. How are you going?
Oh, I'm in awe of that introduction. That's the best introduction I've ever had in my life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm really well, thanks. I'm very happy to be on the show and doing something different. And talking with you guys. It's going to be great fun.
An actor doing something different as in talking about themselves, I'm sure. Anyways, did I pronounce your name right? Because I know we spoke about it before.
You did. You pronounced it brilliantly, and you're a legend for checking because not many people do that. So thank you.
Yeah. Now you've just done the London Marathon.
Yes.
And I'm tired just thinking about it. But I did wear a t-shirt in your honor. It's Snoopy asleep on his kennel, if we can say that. And it says flat out. How are your legs feeling today?
They're not too bad, thanks.
Not too bad.
Yeah. The marathon is something I've done a few times, but this is the first time I've done it off the back of a pandemic where I didn't have much else to do other than go running and get out of the house to do that. So I actually trained properly this time, rather than trying to squeeze it in with work and life. Because we had all the free time in the world. So yeah, not too bad. Thanks.
Yep. Well, like I asked the last guest, why?
Do you know what? That's a question I get asked all the time. It's a cumulative thing. You start off by going for a 5K.
No, 5 minute.
5 minute. Oh yeah, go for a walk, whatever. Go for a walk. Go on your bike, and you just gradually build. And it's something that takes like 5 or 6 years. But it's for me, it's been, without wishing to be too deep or anything, for me, running's been a really good mental health thing. It's been a really good, my time out alone, music on, thoughts, just like personal space. And that's enjoyable because there's not much else of that on offer in this world, especially not when you're a parent as well. So yeah.
Yes. Now, as I mentioned in your introduction, you are dashingly good looking. You are septuply talented in all areas that I believe. Maybe dancing, I didn't quite see as much on your resume. Skiing, I saw. Fencing, I didn't see, which I was surprised because I thought every actor was meant to have fencing on their resume.
You know what? I've never had to learn how to fence or ride a horse yet. So I feel like a bit of a fraud all of a sudden. But yeah, I need to get those two things going if I want to end up on Netflix, I'm sure. So yeah. Projects for next year.
Exactly. Yeah. No more running. Fence. And for the children at home, fencing is not some slang term, nor it is an app. It is sword fighting. Well, the kids call LARPing these days, I believe.
Live action roleplay. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of nerds, we'll move on to metal. Have you had any experience with heavy metal?
I wouldn't say I've had that much experience with heavy metal. I was a huge fan as a teenager of what I would probably call more classic rock and punk rock, new metal. My favorite album as a teenager was Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, and that got me into guitar music. And it was all the cliche stuff as a teen, you know, The Offspring, Americana, and then I got more into sort of looking up Metallica, AC/DC, and I did all that cliche teen stuff, which was fantastic. And I still love listening to all those albums. But I've never gone as sort of heavy metal as the album we're looking at today. So that was really fun to listen to that.
Well, you're lucky you kept talking after you said Linkin Park, because this show's programmed to roll the credits as soon as that band's mentioned.
I did say it was cliche.
Yeah.
They're not that bad. Come on.
Okay. I'm sure the Jamelia cover of Numb that she did on Radio 1's Live Lounge, that was magnificent. But anyway, so we'll move on to the metal album, because this week, Evan, you chose Metalpocalypse's The Deathlebum.
On Spotify.
On Spotify, thank you very much.
No, it's the fictional band Death Clock with their album Death Album from the TV show Metalocalypse.
Oh, clock.
Yeah, Death Clock, as in...
There's an L in it. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a thing. Death clocks were, way back in the day, they used to use mercury for the numbers, and the people who made the clocks obviously died from mercury poisoning.
wow.
So there's this series of clocks called Death Clocks. It's an actual thing.
Oh, wow. Why didn't I do my research on that? I would have got lost for hours. Instead, I was bloody writing a rom-com. Have you ever tried writing a romantic comedy, a Christmas romantic comedy, while you're single, stuck in lockdown? I do not recommend it. Maybe I should start running.
Is it too late to insert a death clock in the story?
No.
Could you shoehorn that in?
No, I'm only on my second draft, so...
Okay, you never know.
Anyways, I wrote a review. Would we like to hear it?
Yes.
Yes, we would. Alrighty. When I first saw the cover, I recognized the name from the hit animated show, which I never watched on account of having taste. But I was excited to hear a cartoon band, and I looked forward to some fun. So I pressed play on the Spotify device, except fun, this was not. Whatever happened to Josie and the Pussycats, Jem and the Holograms, Barbie and the Rockers? Uh-oh, I said her name. I twitch imminent. I admit that I was impressed by the balls of Deathcock's creator, but that's not surprising since Brendan Small begins with a B and ends in all. The Deathlebum was not for me, no matter how genuine this novelty band sounded. It was all just grr, 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 and I hear that enough from my dad. So I've got the Callie Nellies. I'm in a dilemma. The Deathlebum didn't sound slapped together, which was impressive, but it also slapped me around, and that's not cool. Any more of this grr, 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 grr nonsense, and I might have to pull out the Gilbert and Sullivan. I'm warning you, Evan. 2 stars. And that's for not living down to the novelty band name. They were actually, they seemed like a real band. But to translate my review for the band, grr, 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 2 stars. Yeah.
Nice.
Not for me. This was not for me, but I was impressed.
I didn't think you were going to be a fan at all.
When I recognized what it was, I had that moment of, oh, okay, sure. Are they any good though? Like, as in, are they? What's the difference? The difference between the Beatles and the Monkees, let's just say.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually.
Well, the Monkees, all due respect, have some really good songs and have lived on in their own right.
But we're also characters who didn't play their instruments.
Yeah, true.
So
Yeah.
I could have said Milli Vanilli, but one of them died tragically.
Yeah.
So,
you can nearly say the Gorillas, but I mean, they do play their instruments and are a real band.
oh yeah, they're a cartoon band.
They are a cartoon band, yeah.
I should have gone with them, not Barbie and the fucking Rockers. I think I still got that on cassette tape from when I was a little soon-to-be gay kid. Yeah, so I don't know. I would watch the cartoon, but I think I would mentally switch off during the musical numbers. Unlike something like Glee, which was an education in what's on the radio at the moment, which I don't know what's on the radio. At the moment, I get that from Drag Race. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a show first, And this is just the music for the show.
Now, I didn't understand any of the words. Just quickly, we'll get to Nadim's thoughts.
You don't want to read the lyrics.
Didn't understand a single bloody word, but apparently they were quite satirical. And I would want to read the lyrics when I have more of a chance, even though the interview got pushed back a week. And I did actually have extra time, but as I say, I wrote a fucking screenplay in 5 days, which sort of come out of nowhere. Like, oh, let's write this. Okay. Because it's an adult animated writer, right? And a writer of adult animation. That's why I'd be interested, because they have a very satirical mind, very intelligent. Look at shows like Rick and Morty, Family Guy, even The Simpsons. Look at the Muppets. They're not animated, but they are cartoonish. That's my sense of humor.
This is entirely satire and meant to be making fun of death metal bands. And it's a case of, what if a death metal band was a bunch of incredibly talented 12-year-olds? Basically, it's juvenile, it's vulgar, it's disgusting, but the musicianship is just world class.
Yeah,
he's just one of the best guitarists around, and good God, can he play? He is incredible.
Yeah. Now, Nadim, what did you think as our guest?
Evan's last point there was my main takeaway from it. The level of production and musicianship is literally off the scale, and I couldn't quite believe the detail and the layering of everything that was going on. From a taste point of view, I totally got into it, because I understood very early on that it's a genre thing. It is tongue in cheek. It's a send up of a genre, and I enjoy that as a theatre worker. That genre is a thing for us. You know, throwing yourself into a world of, even if it's a world you don't particularly like or understand or have much knowledge of, you can immerse yourself in something and appreciate the detail that's gone into it. And it was excellent it was excellent whilst running. To link it back to what we talked about earlier, because it's got so much energy and so much drive. The one thing that I would have loved was just a shit hot vocal soaring over the top at various points, because what I love personally is the combination of metal and really heavy guitar and really thick drum beats, and someone who can just pierce you with a vocal over the top. And a whole album of to do your wonderful impression. That's all it was missing for me, and I would have totally bought into it and would probably listen to it again if it had that going over the top. But what Evan was saying about the guitar playing is, I mean, that's where the melody comes from on this whole record, and it's insane. There was one song in particular that really made me smile. Is it called Fan Song?
Yeah.
Where, just in case anyone hasn't realized that it's pastiche, it's literally like this, you know, as fans, you don't just give us a reason to play music, you give us something to hate, and we hate you. So thanks, guys. And I really enjoyed that, and it really sort of made it crystal clear what the point was of this album. And listen, it's not something that I will be listening to very much of, because it just doesn't suit my tastes. But as someone who likes making records and likes writing with people who are talented at their specific genre, like, this guy is a genius. And I'd love to know more about what other music he's written. And it sort of made me want to know a bit about him.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. That's why I made a point that this band could just be a novelty. They really could, but they're not. They've taken it seriously. And I didn't get the tongue in cheek that they were poking fun of metal bands from it, because it just seems so angry to me. But two things we hear a lot on this show is that our guests listen to the metal while they're running.
Okay.
Right. That's a common thing. And the second thing we hear a lot is that they probably won't listen to it again. So that's not surprising. But I think for that, I'll give it a 2.5.
Boosted it up.
I'll boost it up a little bit, because I was actually expecting Evan to say, "What the hell, man? This is terrible."
Why would I choose a terrible album?
Why not? We're at war.
No, I didn't. Okay, all right. So I'm going to do my bit. Full disclosure: I had no idea what Rumi was when I chose this album, because it's turned out like the exact opposite. You know, I've basically made Nadim listen to devil music. I have been giggling about that all week. once I realised what was going on, I was like, oh no, oh geez, I hope I don't offend him, because
No, you haven't offended me.
I do warn guests, kind of.
I don't know if I would have chosen something else if if I had have done my research first. I don't know, but yeah, I love this album. This is just something, like I said, I love the cartoon. I've watched all of it. This came out in 2007, and it's all the brainchild of Brendan Small.
Mm-hmm.
He was working on a show called Home Movies for the Cartoon Network, their late night programming called Adult Swim. Doing like after dark, after midnight, putting on more adult content.
Where all the good stuff is.
Yeah, at the time, Dr. Katz was very popular. Cartoon Network were looking for new shows. He established his ability to write for characters in an episodic show. And he approached them with the idea and goes, I've got an idea for a show about an extreme metal band. And they just said, yeah, sure, have 20 episodes. With no idea what he had. He didn't have anything. And he's like, I better go away and make something then. And so he started writing. He went, right. He had this idea that for every episode, there's going to be a new song. And he goes, all right, I need to write 20 songs. I need to sit down. And so off he went, sat in a room, in his little studio and started banging away. And this album is the result. So yeah, and Metalocalypse is basically a family show. It's your basic sitcom family. There's a mum, a dad, a kids. It's your typical sitcom, on top of being juvenile, vulgar, and incredibly violent.
The term is nuclear family.
Yeah, but yeah, you wanted the music to stand alone from the show. And eventually they've done, I think, 4 seasons, which has now got 4 albums. And then they finished it. Funnily enough, you were saying you would like to hear what else he's done. Instead of doing a 5th season, he went, let's write a musical.
Oh, wow.
It's called The Doomstar Requiem, a Metalocalypse musical. There is another metal musical, basically. Although it's not staged, it is, on screen. Someone could just take that on screen and put it on stage. So we've often said, is there metal musicals? This is technically another one. And I nearly chose the musical version. But no, I've always loved this album, just in general. Yeah, it's so well produced. It's so crisp and clean. And I think that's because of the way he recorded it, just him in a room, layering. There's no bleed over in the recordings from different instruments. It's just, perfectly crisp. And I think that's what I love about it. But yeah, this is a parody album written to sound like it was written by a bunch of 12-year-olds. And when you've got song titles like Mermaider, Bloodrecuted, Thunderhorse, Hatred Copter, it's meant to be ridiculous. And yeah, I mentioned how the drums aren't real. Yeah, I love it. I love this album. I really do. I got to listen to this because we delayed our recording by a week or two, and I got to listen to this so many times. Happy to.
I'm happy for you. I really am.
But he studied at the Berkeley. Brendan Small is an incredibly talented dude. He studied at the Berkeley School of Music. He took comedy writing classes, freaking screenwriting classes, and out of college he went and interned at a jingle writing company where we learnt, how to turn out music quickly. These guys have an afternoon to bang out a jingle. And he got to know the tricks of, this guy uses these chords and that guy uses those chords and those harmonies, and we'll reuse them in just different ways, and they'll just bang out music, day after day. So he was able to turn over this album really quite quickly. And it was his first attempt at actually writing an album.
Nice.
This is his first effort.
That's really impressive.
He's gone on to play with everyone. Steve Vais, Joe Satriani's.
Oh, everyone! I know those guys.
Yeah, all the big guitar legends. And he actually got a major coincidence was Metallica basically rang Cartoon Network before the show had even existed and said, we want to do voices on cartoons. So they feature not just Metallica, but I think dude from Queensryche, King Diamond. They all do little voice parts throughout the series, which gave it, a good metal credit on top of the music he'd done.
Maybe I will check it out.
Yeah, it's a very niche comedy show. Like I said, it's violent, it's vulgar, it's disgusting, and death metal orientated. It's a certain specific audience it's going for.
Yeah, well,
quite a narrow audience.
That's fine. I don't know. There was just, look, you know what it was? It was just too much repetition. As Nadim says, if there was some clean singing over or underlaid with or alternating with the unclean vocals, the gra 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 gra, then
Remembering it is a parody, and he sat down to sort of go, this is not only is this a parody of a death metal band, this is what a lot of people think a death metal band sounds like.
That is nothing. Weird Al Yankovic does parody songs, and they each sound different from each other. They just happen to sound exactly like the songs they are parodying.
That is a very good point about, if you were to sort of give a cliche of a vocal style to someone who doesn't like death metal, they would do what we've been doing all morning and going, bah, 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 bah.
Yeah.
But then there are so many great metal bands who have got incredible vocalists as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Brendan is not a singer.
He's a growler.
He's many things, but he's not a singer. Yeah, so this worked well. He's just put effects on it, and off you go.
Yeah. So would you give it a score out of 5, Nadim?
I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Yeah.
3 out of 5. Yeah, that's not too bad. I don't know why I'm writing it down. We don't keep tally. Anyways, I think the metal apocalypse has ended, and we shall pick up the pieces after these messages.
Coming this summer, winter, spring, or fall, the first ever musical theater sitcom, where you go behind the scenes of the latest West End show, the Fosse Forest Ballet.
Where's the important stuff? Aha! £1,000 a week ensemble rate. That's what Mamma Mia likes.
Starring Philip Joel and a West End cast featuring Carrie Ellis, Darren Day, Louise Demon, and Oliver Saville, and more.
It all started in 1987 when I was a jobbing actress working in a diner.
Yeah, it's just I had a really bad experience when I was touring Australia with a wombat.
Darling! Mwah, mwah.
La, la.
How long have I been mentoring you? 3 months?
2 years.
So her name is Henrietta.
The horse. Yes. I've managed to secure you an audition for the biggest, most innovative, and the latest show to be going into the West End. Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. Think more along the lines of Panto.
Frozen.
You can watch this episode for the price of a coffee. Simply go to www.thefosseforestballet.com. Any and all profits go back to theatre charities, Acting for Others, and the Theatre's Trust. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you'll see a grown man in sparkly tights.
Tight nights. Nice. Tights.
You're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Evan, and we're joined by the West End's Nadim Naaman. Now, as I said before, you are a septuple threat and my new mortal enemy. That's all, there's no question. So before we get to Rumi, yourself and your co-writer Dana Al-Fadan wrote Broken Wings together previously. And in Melbourne, we have a very, very large Middle Eastern community. Are there any hopes for a production in the post-COVID future to come over this side of the world, the arse end of the world, as I like to call it?
There are, listen, funnily enough, before COVID, we were actually in talks about a production in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Melbourne specifically because there are so many Lebanese people there. And there was a Gibran exhibition there, I think, in 2020. And the curator of that exhibition is a guy that we know quite well. His name is Glenn Kalem, and he is a Australian-based Lebanese guy who's sort of one of the foremost Gibran experts in the world. And he came to see our show in London, and we tried so hard to make it happen at the Melbourne International Festival, and it was sort of brewing, and then COVID arrived. So I think it's something we'd love to revisit in the future for sure. I personally would love to come and work in Australia. I've never been, and it's something that needs to be rectified.
Please do. I'm going to be there opening night at your invitation, I hope. But I finally, this is great because I'm joking about the whole feeling inadequate thing. Well, kind of 50% joking. But I have found something that I have done that you haven't done. And I made my professional debut in Melbourne at the Melbourne International Festival 21 years ago.
There you go.
So there we go. Oh my God, I don't feel so crap about myself. Yes, no, please. I grew up with a lot of Lebanese kids because in the 90s, we're only a few months apart. So I'm April 85.
Mm.
At the time, there was a lot of immigration or refugees, more so than immigration, that came over. So they were my friends at school. Like that was
Amazing.
who I grew up with and around, and a lot of Vietnamese as well, and Filipino, and along the years pick up little bits of the language and then butcher them in front of them when I visit those countries. Yes. Okay. So you've said previously that yourself and Dana gravitated towards each other. Could you tell our listeners about your process before we get into Rumi?
Yeah.
And how does working in a duo help combat writer's block? And what happens when both of you get it? Do you just want to scream out the window?
Do you know what? Writing in a duo is so great because it immediately gives your music a voice that you are not capable of as an individual.
Yeah.
You find a sound, you find a style, and you're able to tell stories in a way that you would never have come up with on your own. And so there's something really great about that process, particularly with a musical where you're writing in order to tell a story and build a sound world of a specific location and time. And all of that kind of shared experience, I think, really helps build that. It's not like writing an album, a pop album or a rock album or whatever of songs that are expressing your own personal point of view, which I think it can be a very private process. So I think that writing as a team has been really helpful for us, and it's made things really efficient. The way we approach it is, with Broken Wings, it's easier to describe because that's how we fell into our process kind of by mistake, because it was the first one we did. Broken Wings takes place over two parallel timelines. You have Khalil Gibran in his early 40s, which is the end of his tragically young life. He lived in New York City, where he became a famous writer. So that's one timeline. And then you have the timeline of him as a teenager in Lebanon. And we decided to split those two up thematically and to be composed with slightly different sounds to reflect the Middle Eastern world and the New World of America. And so I went away and wrote all the 1923 New York world, and Dana went away and wrote the songs from his teenage years in the Middle East. And we came back and we had 7 songs each. We had 14 songs, and then we had a lot of fun creating the rest of the show by reprising those and mashing them together and fusing it all up. And then we had one orchestrator orchestrate the whole thing to give it that unified sound. So if you listen to the album, you hopefully wouldn't be able to tell that song's clearly by one composer and that's clearly by another. And that process was so much fun, and we enjoyed it so much that we sort of just replicated that with Rumi. And there's no parallel timelines with Rumi, but we just sat down at the beginning when we had our skeleton of the plot and where the songs would come, and we sort of said, well, why don't you write those 7 and I'll write those 7, and then let's get together and see where we are. And then we then wrote 2 or 3 at the piano side by side this time, because she happened to be in London for some of COVID in lockdown, and that was great. We were able to write in the same city for the first time rather than via Zoom and FaceTime and WhatsApp and whatever else. So it's sort of something we've just fallen into, and we like how it works. Saves time as well, you know.
Cool.
You can write a score in 2 years that might otherwise take 4 or 5, I guess, because there's 2 of you at the same time.
That's it. Some things take years and years to write. I wrote novels that took 14 years, Nadim. So we're talking about Rumi today, the musical, which was your second collaboration together. Now, Evan, you are our metal man, so you dived into this world this week.
Big time.
So you can take the mic.
Yeah. As I said before, I hadn't heard of Rumi as a person.
Well, that's racist. Sorry.
Like I said, I got Prince of Persia playing in the background. I'm not even sure if that is.
Perfect. It's one of my favorite games from childhood, so it's all good. So, yeah.
Oh, is that? Oh, there you go.
Good. All good.
Fantastic. I just remember falling off.
But yeah, my normal process is like, I'll listen to this album. You'll give me something and I'll just listen to it blind. I have no idea what it is, who it's by. I listened to it a couple of times and I'm sitting there going, okay, I need to know what this is about. And of course, you know, you're not up yet. What are you, the 23rd and 24th of November
right.
is your opening date.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of information on the plot, but turns out it didn't need to be, because I then started going, well, who's Rumi? And that went down a massive rabbit hole. I've been researching my ass off. I just find it fascinating. So yeah, Rumi's a 13th century Persian poet, but more than that, he's a beloved scholar, teacher, just an all-round wise man of God. And his writings translated really well into the Western society and their themes. So he's hugely popular. And in Turkey, and he's kind of borderless because he's a little bit of Afghanistan, a little bit of Turkey, a little of Iran, Iraq. He's kind of everywhere, and he's just it's really hard, or it's easy to understate just how revered, beloved a scholar he was or is. Yeah. So and he's all about finding God within oneself, and that everything that exists is within you. And all our souls are all pieces of God, and that when we die, our essence returns to God. That led me down to the whirling dervishes who dance the Sema. And I was lucky enough to find there's a full documentary, not just like the touristy version. There's the full ceremony, and there was a great voiceover explaining what's going on and why, and the symbolism of the hats and their cloaks and their rotations around the circle, and the 3 rotations being the 3 states of man you have to go through to become a perfect man. And I ended up watching documentaries. I've spent hours and hours and hours going into Rumi and why he was so popular. And then it's not just his writings and his poetry. Then I had to go into okay, what is this actually about? It seems to be the life of Rumi and his friendship with Sherms. And there's a lot of conjecture, or at least undecided, what really happened to Sherms.
Yeah.
And I was wondering where your musical takes that, or if it addresses it at all. Some of them,
or are we spoiling it for the audience that are paying?
No, I don't want to do spoilers, but there's three schools of thought. One is where he left in order to advance Rumi as a person, because there was a duality, and the only duality there should be is between you and God. And, Rumi was just nearly infatuated with Sherms to a point where it was stifling his own spiritual advancement. So he left, in order to free Rumi from that duality. There's also another theory which I don't really agree with, that Rumi's followers were jealous of their friendship and had Sherms removed somehow. And then I saw there was another story where it kind of suggested both. It doesn't seem to be a consensus on what happened to Sherms, whether he left on purpose or was removed. But yeah, Rumi was devastated by the loss of Sherms. They were only together 16 months, and all he knew was that Sherms had left and gone to Damascus. And Rumi travelled from Konya about 4 times, staying for months at a time, searching for Sherms, and as far as we know, never found him. But he achieved that separation to be able to further his own, spiritual knowledge, and reflected in his writings. And he wrote some of the greatest things to come out of that region of the world, even today. And one of his most famous quotes is, what was it? "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I am changing myself." And that is really all what he's about, is everything that you are, or everything that you want to be, you already are within yourself. He was big on celebrating God through song and dance. And by, I think, writing a musical about his life, you've certainly furthered that idea.
You hear that, composers? When I die, that's what you've got to do, is write a musical about my life, because that's how I live it. Anyways, sorry, Evan.
But yeah, the music itself. I'm not going to try and pronounce Rumi's name. That's beyond me.
You don't want to look white?
No. His full name is really a mouthful. Was it Mavlana is the other one? He's got many names.
Yeah, that's like the Maulana is literally translated as spiritual leader, and I think it's still used in Persian region and the Middle East and even South Asia as well, in Indian communities, and which is a reflection of how far this kind of spiritual branch of religion spread across the Middle East and Asia. But yeah, his full name, I mean, he's referred to by so many different people as so many different things. And I think that links back to what you were saying, Evan, about how all of these countries that he was affiliated with all want to claim him.
Yes.
So Turks will tell you he's Turkish and that it's outrageous for calling him Iranian, and Iranians will do the same, and Afghans will do the same. And the irony being that the whole point of Rumi is that he transcends, and what he believes in transcends borders and religions, and he's been accepted by the world basically, and yet you still have people sort of fighting in a sectarian way over ownership of him, which is a shame because it sort of misses the point completely.
It's completely against any of the teachings, really.
We used to do that with Mel Gibson, and then he kind of did what he did, so America can have him. Anyways.
What was I going to say? So anyway, listening to the album itself, exactly like you were saying, it does all feel like it was written by one person. You know, there's no separation. I wouldn't have guessed that it was two separate people writing separate songs and then mashing them together. Standout tracks, When, I think track 3?
4 or 5.
5. Yeah, I love When for some reason. It's just got that big orchestra feels. I think it's the key changes and the progression. It just gets you. I don't know. It really just does. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the only bit of flute in it, or certainly the only sort of flute solo, because again, the flute is very significant in the Dance of the Sema, at least. The flute being a representation of human. What is it? Man is like the cut reed, where man blows their breath through the flute create a noise. We are the flutes to God's breath, and if a perfect man was to play his flute, once achieving being a perfect man, if he was to play his flute, then the sound would be as the sound of God. Yeah, the flute is quite a main instrument with the whole thing. So I would have liked to have heard a bit more flute throughout the whole show.
It's a really interesting point you made. If you ever do go back and listen to it again, what we have instead of the flute, that as we know the flute, is we have a Persian instrument called a nai, which is a sort of medieval wooden flute. Right. If you listen to the overture, it's like in the first 20 seconds of the show, of the whole album, that's the soloing instrument in the background. So if you hear, it doesn't sound like a flute. It could be anything else. It doesn't sound like a modern flute. So I'm not saying, you're absolutely right. When is one of the times where we only hear like a classical flute, which is supposed to bring out the youthful quality of the young lovers. But if you go back and hear that sound and go, okay, so that's a ney, that's a wooden flute, and that's allegedly the instrument that Rumi himself played, you'll then hear that loads through the show, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I now get why that's there. So you're absolutely right in your observation that there's another instrument that's doing what you want the flute to do.
Your criticism is null and void, Evan.
But it was a very astute point. It's astute.
I know, and I am very impressed with how much research he does.
Yeah, it's really great. Your points are amazing.
Well, it was kind of after I'd done all my research on Rumi, and well, I don't think you could ever be done. That's the whole point. You know, one of the states of being is to knowledge is to learn all you can know, and not what you can't know, because that's unknown.
No, I'm confused.
Go Rumi. Freedom Waits is another great song. That one really stands out. It's like it's a big standalone single for some reason. I wrote that down. And the other one, Germ's Departure. What a song. That's great. That's just brilliant. It's tough when there's no visual in a musical, when this thing isn't on stage yet. And I know you've seen it, but I don't know if you've snuck in any whirling dervishes. I don't know if you're allowed to.
Aren't they fireworks, or are they lollies from Harry Potter?
They might be a type of firework.
Yeah, that's what I know them from. Or it's a ride in Roller Coaster Tycoon.
What a game!
Oh, I know, right?
The interesting, Evan, the really interesting thing about what you just said is that the idea of this show is that it examines the moment in Rumi's life. It's kind of an origin story of sorts. It examines the moment in his life where he makes the switch from being a regular teacher, normal man of society living the equivalent of a 9-to-5, through his friendship with Shams, becomes the man who goes on to become a poet and philosopher for the rest of his life. And the same applies to the whirling So the idea is what we see in this show, in the dance side of it, is him and his followers coming up with what then becomes the whirling dervish.
Yeah.
So it's the sort of the origins of the summer. So it's not the polished, refined thing that the tourists see. It's like them exploring the idea of twirling to let the soul levitate and have a closer connection to God and more of an outer body experience. So it's like it's a more raw and earthy version of the whirling that it becomes more and more enhanced as the show progresses and they do it more often.
Yeah, the Dance of the Sema was developed after his death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it was basically because all life and all things revolve around the sun, and God is. He doesn't say God is the sun. He's saying God is like the sun, where all people and all things revolve and gravitate around the sun. So that is basically why they turn. They're rotating around God.
The other thing that's really interesting is that Shams, the name literally means sun.
Oh,
so that adds a whole new layer to his poetry. So sometimes you read it and you're like, is he talking about the sun in the sky, or is he talking about the man who changed his life, or both? And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this friendship, this extraordinary friendship.
Very cool, very cool. But yeah, I've spent many hours, learning all I can know. And not learning what's unknown.
You make this show look good, Evan.
Yeah, I'm really impressed, Evan.
No, I found it fascinating. It was this thing that I'd never heard of and never seen. And once you do a bit of research, you stumble upon the whirling dervishes, and like I said, sitting down and watching the full, it was like hour or so ceremony, and I'm sitting there going, I mean, initially, I think what appeals to the Western society is the pure fascination of how are they not falling over? How are they not bumping into each other?
Yeah.
And they'll do their, there's like 4 stages of it, and in between greetings and, throwing off their shrouds and burying their ego, and it's like, oh my God, they're spinning again. Oh, surely they're done. No, they're off again. It's like, how are these guys not giving themselves an aneurysm or something? I don't know what happens when you continually spin. It must take a hell of a lot of practice.
Did you get used to it?
You get used to it.
You do.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point, and that's their way of achieving, whether you want to say nirvana, or I think they call it ecstasy, just becoming maybe not closer to God, but certainly opening the door part way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, beside the point, the music. Yeah, I can't wait to see this. Or if it ever came up that I could somehow end up in London to see it, or if it travelled, I don't know what kind of staging you've got.
Well, they're doing a concert version first.
Concert version first.
Okay.
Is that in the hope that backers come?
Yeah, I mean, we call it concert version, but the reality is that it's at least like semi-staged.
Oh, good. Yeah.
We are not staging it like a traditional musical with the orchestra in the pit, and huge set pieces and moving set that changes. We are doing with the orchestra on stage. There is a design. There will be costume. There will be dance, but essentially it's a orchestra on stage with a playing space in front, and we tell the story just using people rather than some of the other big devices that might get used in musical theatre. And the idea is exactly as you said, to sort of put it in the shop window and say, we've written this piece and this is an idea of the world that it belongs in, but we are hoping that full-time producers who might have an idea of how they would like to see it staged then come to the table and say, we're interested in this piece, can we develop it further, can we take it here, can we take it there? So it's like just announcing that we've arrived and we have a complete piece that's ready to go, but we don't want to be the ones who make all those big artistic decisions about what that big set might be and how big the cast might end up being and what you might do with the orchestra. We just want to present the material in its purest form.
Yeah, that's a very, very good lesson for the kiddies at home who think they can write a screenplay and hand it over to someone and it's going to be made exactly how they wrote it in their vision. No, you're writing something for a producer or a director to then do their vision with it. That's why we write things. You have to be able to let go of your work at one point. Now, just one quick question about Rumi, because we'll move on. What was the most surprising fact that you found out about him during this process?
That's a really good question. I think that the thing that I'm most fascinated by is how his reputation is so rooted in God and religion, and how he has been a sort of adopted as this religious figure. I think it's just fascinating how this man who has become such a symbol of religion and the Sufism and this sort of spiritual sect of Islam, there's so much about him that's so much more rooted in humanity than that. He's been sort of almost deified over the centuries. But what's so interesting about this story is it's all about humanity. And, you know, the relationship between Rumi and Shams has never really been explored in a human way. They're sort of put on this pedestal as these untouchable figures who you can't sort of discuss properly. But the reality is that they were real men with real feelings and real emotions. And we all know that poets write from places of human experience, of love and loss and pain and suffering. And that's why we wanted to tell this story, I think. And not only with Rumi and Shams, but with their families and the people. Well, not Shams doesn't have a family. Shams is a lone wolf. But Rumi, when Shams arrives in Rumi's life, Rumi is on his second marriage. He has kids. He has a wife who he's deeply in love with. And it's like examining what is the price of fame in a medieval sense. You know, the rise to the top. If you're going to build a legacy that lasts 800 years, what sort of falls by the wayside along the way? And there are many purists out there who will see our show and think, why is it so little of it about religion and so much of it about them as normal people? But that's kind of why we're doing it. We're doing it to sort of humanize them and make them three-dimensional real people. And we are, as I said earlier, we are looking at the origin of this part of Rumi's life. You know, the show takes place, Rumi's between like the ages of 36 and 38.
Well, that's where we are. Oh shit.
Yeah, it's where we are.
We better hurry up if we want to be deities. Yeah.
You've got to meet your Shams in the next couple of years, the guy who's going to change your life and make you go and write for the rest of your years and leave your legacy behind.
I can't even find a guy to buy me dinner, Nadim. Anyways.
You will eventually have to leave because all things are temporary.
Because all men leave me, you mean? Anyways, yeah. Sorry, we'll stop going on about my love life.
That's one of the things that fascinated me is once you sort of realize just how revered and, like I said, deified he is, and then to go, hang on, this is not a Bible story. This is not some guy who may or may not have existed. You know, it's all there. There's his writings. There's Sherm's writings. There's the history is all there. He's a real dude with a family and kids and a father, and it's really freaking cool. Just like I said, just fascinating learning about this entire thing I hadn't seen anything about, just completely blind to the whole movement, really.
Yeah. And you know what's so great about hearing that, Evan, is that, you know, it's kind of the point of why we write these Middle Eastern stories and put them on the stage, because, you know, in the Middle East, or in Persia in this case, these people are so well known that it blows their mind that there are people who don't know them. But the reality is that the West has a very blinkered and narrow perception of what goes on in the Middle East, and that's because of what we see on the news and what we see, you know, what we see in TV drama and film. You know, I remember when Homeland was a hit show, and there's a scene in Homeland that's allegedly set on a road in Beirut, which is where my family live, and they shot this in a desert in Iraq.
Right.
And then you've got millions of Americans and Europeans sitting there going, oh, okay, so that's what Lebanon's like. Wow, okay. And they don't question it. They just absorb this, and they absorb the terrorist stories. They absorb the refugee stories. They absorb all the problematic things. But no one is kind of going, let's just celebrate this unreal history of literature and culture and dance and music, and just so much beauty from the Middle East. That all the religions came from the Middle East. The alphabet came from the Middle East. So much there that the West, just through no fault of their own, have never been exposed to. So we're trying to sort of go, here, have a look at the life story of this person, and if it makes you want to go and do a bit of research or read a few poems, then we've kind of done our job. And it's so great to hear that that's the experience you had, and you kind of went, as you said, you went down that rabbit hole. And I remember that when I went down my first Rumi rabbit hole, however many years ago, and the same with Gibran on Broken Wings, you just sort of you can't believe you don't know more about these people already when you're exposed to them.
And bring back to your point of the perception of that region. When I've gone, okay, Rumi is it Sufi?
Sufi, yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Sufi. And you Google, I then Googled Sufi Muslim on image search. Don't. You end up with this whack job Iranian sect that perform all sorts of crazy acts that would not be any part of the Quran or Rumi's teachings. And that's the first result is these horrible images of yeah. I'm not even going to go into it. It's really not part of it at all. I don't know how they even have that name. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes up is, look at this weird stuff. Look at this horrible shit. And I'm like, that's not it.
How can you not believe they share that name when the Nazis co-opted the Buddhist symbol?
Yeah, true. Yeah, but it's like even now, like modern day, these are these whack job groups that have just twisted the whole theme but that's the first result is the annoying thing. If you Google Sufi, you don't end up with images of Rumi. You end up with the extreme side of I don't know who they follow. That's just I saw a lot of comments of going, this is not what Rumi is about.
What's interesting about that is you were saying earlier you were talking about the theory of Rumi's followers. And whether they were annoyed with Shams' arrival. And what's interesting is that we as you did, we did all our research and we saw all the different threads of what might have happened at this time. And what we try and do in the show is we try and have a bit of both flavors. We sort of have Shams leaving of his own free will to allow Rumi to progress in life as an individual. But we also have the element of the jealous, loyal followers who were there before, who then lose their leader to one man. And the reason we wanted to put that in is because we think that this very topic you're now discussing is a real problem with all religions in the world in general, that no matter what the teachings actually say, there is a risk of becoming very right-wing, very traditionalist, to the point where you are aggressive and violent in your opinion to anyone who disagrees. And we see this play out in the world all day, every day. You're correct as long as you agree with me, sort of thing,
Yeah.
And the reality is that Rumi was a very revered teacher in a very wealthy city. Konya was a very wealthy place in the 13th century, and everyone there would have then seen this nomad come in from Damascus in rags, this guy who's got rid of his earthly possessions to sort of put himself closer to God. And they will have been absolutely baffled by the fact that Rumi's invited this guy into his home. And there will have been some jealousy and there will have been some worry. But of course, the true followers of Rumi, the true followers of the branch of Islam that they kind of developed at the time, know how much Rumi without Shams is nothing. Shams was the mentor, Shams was the guide, and they were the yin and yang to one another. They were complete opposites, but the whole that they created is the reason there is an 800-year legacy.
That's like our show, the yin and the yang.
The yin and the yang.
Yes.
Very good.
Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I had to throw it in
One
there.
day I'll have to dump your ass so you can flourish.
Me? No. I just want to say that on Spotify, okay, I'm used to seeing old white dudes when it comes to movie composers that I listen to all the time. But it was really, really lovely seeing Dana's eyes, because she's got this beautiful blue picture of her it's sort of her eyes, and she's got really stunning eyes. So, girlfriend, I'm jealous of you too. Bloody hell, you guys. So Evan, quickly your score, because we'll move on.
Well, I did give this a bit of thought. Like I said, I have listened to this. I did listen to it again after doing my research and sort of went, oh, of course, this all makes sense. And I was able to, pick out the periods of his life and it really helps to know the story, and listening to it again. So I've listened to it a good 5 times all the way through.
Gosh.
Well, we had lots of time with it. So, and for a long time, I was wondering what am I going to write about?
That's me every week.
I know. And it's always comes together in the last minute. But yeah, the more I listen to it, the more you like it, and knowing the story helps to separate the songs into periods of his life. I thought about what score, and I reckon I'm going to have to go 4.9.
Wow.
Because I'm not yet a perfect man.
Book of Mormon got 6 out of 5. So, yeah.
I'll take 4.9 out of 5. I'll take it. It's fabulous.
Press Frozen also got a 5.
Yeah, Frozen got a 5. Yeah. Because my scope of musicals was very small at the time. Like, well, I've only heard 3 musicals, and this was the best. You know.
That is true. Anyways, Rumi has it. We're going to throw to an ad break. We'll be back in a moment. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistantales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. Crack, thud, the human trips over the uneven ground as the Twanimal blows out the lantern. Watch your step, Cubpaw says a little too late. Why did you put the light out? Bollycosh, an open flame near hay bales? And here I thought you were smart, sir. Toniston agrees with how silly he must have sounded. What are we doing out here? The boy asks as they blindly walk around the side of the house, where they're greeted by giant shadows rising up above them. Unable to properly see in the pitch-black darkness, Toniston presumes they are the 3 hay bales. He looks around. The plains are vast, and the spotlights out in the distance, now a purple colour, seem to be too far away to bring any real light to them. They do, however, look very pretty dancing on the rippling oceanic sky. Stand back, the silhouetted Cubpaw warns with his gruff but friendly voice, clearly able to see in the darkness better than the human, who had constantly refused to eat his carrots. Grab your copy of The Toniston Tales from thetonistonTales.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Alrighty, we listen to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Evan, and we are joined by another West End. Actually, no, you're probably going to air before Hadley. So you're going to be our first West End heartthrob. Sorry, Dave Muscat, but you were born in Australia. So you're an Australian heartthrob there. Anyways, now when I was writing, so did I introduce your name or did I just say heartthrob and then stop? Nadim Naman. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So when I was writing my novels, The Toniston Tales, I would sit down and I would listen to a piece of music by Pierre Henry called Psych Rock or Psyche Rock, depends on how bogan you are. Do you have a go-to place, so physically or mentally, in order to then get into that frame of mind to create?
It's a really good question. My writing process always starts with lyrics.
Yep.
And in the case of Rumi, that came mostly from his poetry. So the fun way in to the writing sessions was always knowing what song I was going to tackle next, and what the purpose of that song was in the show. What narrative was that driving forward? What character was that developing? What did we want to put across? What messages did we want to put across in that song? And then returning to Rumi's poetry and finding the sort of the gems, finding the verses and the phrases and those incredible quotes he has, just finding the right ones to suit that point of the story. And I tend to find it, I'll create what I call like a lyric mood board, where I will just type 2-3 sides of A4 of images and phrases that I think will somehow have a place in this story. And then I'll sit at the piano, and just by repeating the poetry out loud find that like a pattern or a rhythm or a tempo begins to form in my head, and then I'll literally just go, okay, I'm now going to pick a key and just play and see what happens. And eventually maybe only 10% of those lyrics from that mood board will get used. But yeah, I find it all, if it comes from the words and it comes from thinking about what the story needs to be during this song, that's the easiest way in. I don't really get on very well by sitting down at the piano and trying to come up with a tune first. I just end up, that's when I get writer's block, and I just realize that I'm rehashing something I wrote 8 years ago.
And start emotionally abuse the piano.
Yeah, it comes from the words every time.
Listening to it, listening back to it this morning, after doing, I was literally listening to Rumi's poetry. There's plenty of YouTube of people just reading it, and then listening back to it again, and then I can hear all the bits and the references to mirrors, and it really helps to know the story and know Rumi, and then listen to it, and I can hear it. You've littered the poetry all the way through it. It's very cool.
That's great to hear.
Okay, now what's your least favorite warm-up song?
Oh, wow. My least favorite warm-up song is Bella Signora.
Okay, how does that go? Could you enlighten us? I'm not paying your fee to perform, so it's a warm-up.
Yeah, it's just this. It's not even a song. It's just like this really annoying vocal exercise that musical directors get us to do before the show every night. They assume everyone enjoys singing it, but you have to put on this cod operatic voice and go Bella Signora, and just go up the scale and down the scale for like 8 minutes. And even if you're in a show where that isn't the vocal style or anything, it's just sort of they all just do it, and they love playing it. They love playing the arpeggios, and then they do the worst thing ever and say, okay, add a harmony, guys. And you're in a room with like 20 musical theatre singers all trying to outdo each other with their harmonies, and it's not great.
Yes, been there many times. You only need to walk in a room with 5 of us and we start doing that. Yes. Okay, now I'm glad that was a classical answer, because you do have a very classical voice, a very gorgeous voice for a man. And I'm on record on this show saying I don't actually like men singers, because I love my divas. I love my women. That's
totally fair.
That's it. I mean, half of them, like, Madonna, Britney, can't sing, but that's fine. They got the songs. Now, have you ever thought of dressing up with the full beard and looking homeless, and then going out on the street and pulling a Susan Boyle or a Paul Potts on everyone and just blowing them away, thinking, here's some homeless guy that just for shits and giggles.
Do you know what? I have, to an extent. Yeah, I have, because sometimes I'm walking through London, I walk past a busker who is phenomenally talented, and I just think, God, how lucky am I that I don't have to be doing this, and I actually am doing this for a career, and they're on the street doing it. But then there are other times I walk through central London, and I'll walk past the most awful busker I've ever seen, who can't play, can't sing, and then I look in their hat, and they've got like 60 quid, and I just think, all those times I've been unemployed and stressed about where my next paycheck's coming from, maybe I should have just done this. Maybe I should have just put a coat on and gone and sung in the streets. And if I'd made 30 quid a day and done that every day for a week, I'd have made more money than I have done on some acting jobs. So it's a funny one. Yeah, like it's a sort of thing that I think requires a lot of guts. But yeah, maybe I should have done.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? Just for a laugh.
Aaron, are you implying that all those TikToks of amazing homeless man belts out,
they're all set up?
They're all set up.
Of course they are. And I'm also implying that he looks homeless with his beard. No, I'm kidding. Because I wrote that question before I knew you had a beard. So anyways, what's one role you're eager to play after you turn 50, but nothing from bloody Sweeney Todd? Because that's the answer that everyone freaking gives with their dream roles. No Sweeney Todd. Love it, but no.
After 50, I'd really like to play Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady.
Yeah,
because he's just a bit of an arsehole. He's an anti-hero, isn't he? He's like he's charming and he's clever and he's witty, but he's got some awful points of view. And I did the show quite recently, and I sat there quite a lot of it thinking, God, I can't believe that this hasn't become a more controversial show than it has. You know how some, like, we revisit things and people go, well, this is a bit sexist now, this is a bit racist now, we can't do this anymore. My Fair Lady is full of that, and most of it
I agree.
from Higgins. But he's becoming a bit more of a villainous character than he used to be. And I think that would be quite a challenge to find a way of doing that without having everyone in the audience hate you.
I completely agree with that. And have you worked with?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Because I was like 1999, 2000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't no ill feelings or anything, but she was tweeting out when she was doing My Fair Lady that Eliza Doolittle is a feminist icon for all time. And I'm like, honey, that poster is literally a man with a marionette puppet of a woman. There is nothing feminist about that show at all. It is, Grease is pretty much a parody of that in the end, where she, becomes the thing that the man wants her to become. So I completely agree on that.
She sort of threatens to stand on her own 2 feet for a very short period of time and has some empowering moments, but then 5 minutes later, she walks back into his house. The last image we see in the show is that she couldn't walk away. She comes back. So
women out there, you don't have to become classy. You can sound illiterate to be a woman. It does not matter at all. Anyways, we'll move on from that one because I'm going to get in trouble for that. We'll censor any names because obviously I'm going to have to cut a little bit out of that. When was the last time you wanted to walk out of a show?
What a great question.
I know, right?
The last time I wanted to walk out of a show.
And did you? Because that's one thing to want to. It's another thing to...
Oh, God, this has happened to me loads of times. But the reason it's a hard question is because of COVID. So it's like, I haven't actually seen very much for 2 years. So I'm trying to remember... The last time I wanted to walk out of a show was when I was in Athens doing Phantom of the Opera, and the producers invited us to the press night of their other production that season, which was Chicago. And we all were like, of course we'll go, because these are our bosses. They're inviting us to their other show, and we're going to go and see it. But we didn't know that it was going to be in Greek at the time. Okay. We thought it was going to be in English because we were doing Phantom in English. Yeah. And they were like, oh, by the way, in Greece, everything's a little bit late. Like, so if it doesn't start on time, don't worry about it. It's just the celebrities that take their time arriving, blah, blah, blah. And we're thinking like we might start 10 minutes late. But no, this show started at about 11:15 at night.
Oh, shit.
It's like a 2.5 hour musical. And we had just done a 10 till 6 rehearsal day. Oh. And it was in Greek, so I didn't understand a word that was being said. And just the whole thing was like, I needed matchsticks to keep my eyes open. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't because the show was bad. The show is probably amazing. But I was just sat there and it was just going straight over my head.
Yep. That's all right. I don't need to censor that. That's cool. Was it the same production with the band on stage and no costumes, no sets, and you're still paying fucking premium price?
No.
Okay, good.
It was a full production.
Oh, good.
It was a full production. Good. There was a lot going on. Yeah.
Good.
That was part of the madness of it, because I was like, if it was the same as the one I'd seen in London, at least I'd be able to like know where we are and what's going on. It was very, very bright and vivid and huge in scale, and so it was just bonkers. It was just completely bonkers. I've never seen a musical in another language before, which is a bit ridiculous. Like maybe I should have. But
I listened to a lot of foreign cast recordings.
Yeah,
because a lot of the times the interpretations of the music, the reorchestrations and the sound of it might be darker or it might be funkier or just different in the ways. Yeah. And I'd love to learn foreign languages. Chicago's one that with that skimpy everything. I'm not paying for that. Give me something that does have sets and
a full show.
Costumes, no fucking scaffolding. Anyways, that's it. What's been your experience? Because obviously you've done Phantom of the Opera a couple of times in different countries. Did you do the Royal Albert Hall?
I did, yes.
Oh, you did. See, we had Hadley on the show.
Hadley, that at that point in time, I was the Raoul understudy in the London production. And this is the most tenuous claim to fame of all time. Hadley is wearing all of my costumes in that.
Oh wow!
In that DVD because we're the same size, the same height, and the same just general sizing. So he came up to me on day one and was like, "You Nadeem?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I'm wearing all your costumes. Thanks for that." And that was how we met. And then we became we became pals, and he's a great guy.
And now you've both ended up on this show. Whoa, that's some X-Files, Twilight Zone shit right there.
10 years on.
Oh wow, was that 10 years ago? Oh goodness me, we're all getting
10
old.
years, yeah.
Okay, now on that, you've done Phantom. What's been your experience with standing ovations? Because obviously West End audiences are a little bit more cynical than Broadway audiences who will stand up at anything.
Standing ovations happen mostly when you're working on a new show. I think it happens less here with the kind of the long running hits, because I think in a new show the audience will be filled with true theatre lovers. You won't have the tourist crowds. You won't have the families who are just coming in for a night out. You'll have the people who are there because they really want to be there. So I find that the theatre crowds are more likely to stand up here. But then people are quite like sheep. So if you're in Her Majesty's doing Phantom on a Friday night and 3 people in the front row decide they're going to stand up, then generally other people go, "Oh, we should probably stand up then." Yeah. So there's a sort of, it happens, but it's definitely not like the American version where they just go crazy. Here it's more like, "Oh, I suppose we should probably stand up." It's very British.
Yeah, I suppose we should.
Yeah, I suppose we probably should. I have to stand up now because the person behind me won't be able to see, so they'll stand up too, and it'll all be fine. We'll all just stand and politely clap. It's more like that.
That's the thing. It's politely clapping. It's so regimental now, in my opinion. I've seen it happen that many times, and it's nothing. And look, we've asked this question to many performers, and I don't think anyone's been offended by it, because I'm basically saying, did you feel you deserved your standing ovation when you got it? But all of them, I don't need to ask that, because all of them will say that when they've gotten it, they've known when they've earned it, because they've felt it.
Yeah.
They felt that the energy was there. They felt it on the stage with their cast members. They felt it in their body, in their voice. So I disagree with David Zippel when he says that actors aren't the best example or the best judge of that, because you do feel that energy on the stage, but you also feel that lack of energy, that regimental. They're standing up and politely clapping because they feel that that's what they have to do. No, you don't have to. That's an actor's reward is the applause, right? When they've exceeded their own expectations and given that performance that makes an audience member stand up and scream and smack their hands together so hard, that's when they walk away going, "I fucking rock tonight." And that's what makes them feel better. Not a cliche one. Sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, I think sometimes the other thing that actors need to do is recognize when a large part of the standing ovation is because the piece is amazing. I think it's very easy. It's happened to me. I've been in shows where I know the performance has been far from the best, but the piece is so strong that the audience will still stand because they can't believe how they've been moved by it, or how they've laughed if it's a comedy. Or, well, there you go. There's one. Come From Away. I'll say it. It certainly is. It's one of those where you just
stand up at the end of it. Yeah,
you're blown away. And it wouldn't matter who's in the cast. It wouldn't matter whether they have that kind of voice or that kind of voice, or whether they can belt that note or belt that note. Like, nobody cares. It's about the whole thing. And in a bizarre way, I think Phantom is a show like that as well. I think Phantom is a show where there's no reliance on a particular actor. We are all kind of replaceable parts in a bigger machine. And I think that you could barely sing as the Phantom, but you'd still make people cry, and you'd still have people going crazy at the end, because the way that role is written, it just works that way. And there are some shows where actors, I think, are receiving a standing ovation, but they know deep down it's because they're just lucky to be in a really good show.
And I think it will have the reverse effect on it, but it leads to, what advice would you give to younger performers in terms of filtering that ego from confidence?
Really good question. I think the difference between the two is that ego is kind of contradictory because of what the word means, but I actually think ego is about other people. Your ego is about comparing yourself to other people, wanting to outdo other people, wanting to be the best in a context. Whereas confidence is about how you perceive yourself and what you are good at and what you can bring to the table that other people can't. So I think that I think ego is more selfish because it's about wanting to beat others, whereas confidence is about, these are the things that make me an individual, and these are the ways I'm not like other people, and I need to embrace that because there's only one of me.
Yeah.
And those individualities are going to be the things that get you a job. So yeah, I think it's about that. I think it's about be confident in yourself because you're your own product and you're the only thing that's going to land you work in this business. Whereas if you spend your time obsessing over beating the competition or outdoing that person or that person, it's not going to be as pleasant an experience, and people can see through that. It's also, ego's a funny one in our business because so often we play roles that have been played by like 50 other people or 100 other people, and so you have to think of it as it's a team game, it's a team effort. Like I've been very lucky. I've played Raoul for many years in Phantom in different productions, but so have 100 other guys. You know, we're like passing on the baton, looking after a character and giving our interpretation for a while. But there are some actors who will be like, this is my role now, and I'm the definitive Christine or Phantom or Raoul or whatever it is. And it doesn't work like that because you'll leave one day and then someone else will play it. So I think people just need to focus on enjoying the moment and giving their all to something without worrying too much about other people. It's hard. It's not always easy, but I think you've got to try at least.
That was a really astute answer, and your parents must like you. Speaking of parents, if you ever want to do a parent trap swap, I'd be happy not doing the marathon.
Okay.
Anyways, Panto season is coming up. So which iconic pantomime dame would you like to play one day? And can I write one with you one day? Because you guys can write music, I can write comedy.
Yeah.
So I would like to write a pantomime with someone who is actually going to write music and not tell me that they're going to, and they don't deliver to the 5 people out in the world who won't be listening to this. There you go.
I'd love to do a panto, and I love to do a panto with original songs because over here that's quite a rare occurrence. Like everyone just, steals the pop songs and the musical songs, and you just have original songs
and jokes. Yes. So
yeah.
let's change the game up, Nadim.
Yeah. Which dame would I like to play? It's a really good question.
This is not a question for our American listeners.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Probably have no idea what we're talking about.
I'm going, what's a panto?
Pantomime. Like,
how's that different?
Behind you. It's like they're fairy tales, and they're typically done at Christmas time.
Yeah.
It's audience interaction. They're very silly and over the top. Men play women, women play men.
It's like theatre of the absurd.
Right.
It's like
I think Punch and Judy for some reason that pops into my head.
What one?
Punch and Judy, yeah, the puppets.
Stems from that sort of area. Yeah, so
they're so popular over here because for many children and families, they're kind of like a way into the theatre world. It's like, you might as a 5 or 6 year old kid, you go and see a panto at Christmas, and it's the first time you're seeing comedy on stage, live singing on stage, dancing on stage, and that kind of then develops into a love for the full-blown thing. But I've done a couple over the years, and they're really hard. They're really hard. Oh, yeah. They're exhausting because it's all so high energy slapstick comedy. You've got kids to entertain who are much harsher critics than adults because they'll tell you if they're bored. They'll tell you if something's not funny. They won't politely clap and laugh. So yeah, it's a totally different art form. I think I'd like to play Jack's mother in Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah.
I think that would be the one because then you get to do all the comedy with Daisy the cow as well, which is quite a common one over here.
Yeah.
Two actors in a cow costume. Come on, like that's what you want, right?
That's it. I'm so thankful I never had to play a cow or any animal, though I did have to play seaweed. Not bitter at all. Anyways, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so after Rumi, what rumors can we spread?
One thing I can tell you is that something's going to be announced very soon about Broken Wings.
Yeah.
Which we obviously haven't been focusing on for the last year because of COVID and because it was our Rumi. We decided to make it our Rumi time to get Rumi finished. Thankfully, some amazing producers who have been interested in the show for a couple of years have kind of revisited Broken Wings and picked up that energy again after the pandemic break. So yeah, there's going to be an announcement soon about that show having a next chapter, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
Because it's sort of it's the first time it's another producer looking after it and doing what we were discussing earlier, you know, handing the baby over, handing it over to someone else to put their vision on the piece. And that's what I've always wanted as a writer, to reach that point where I'm not pushing everything myself. So yeah, watch this space. Should be news quite soon.
Awesome. Now, Evan, do you have any questions? Because we've kept Nadim long enough.
Yeah, I think the only one that really kept popping into my head is just getting this whole thing off the ground, and how you managed to snag the Qatar Orchestra to play for you. I mean, none of this is cheap or easy. And I know, you know, it's your second full production, so you know you have done this before, but just getting it off the ground during lockdowns and COVID, and you know, how did you manage to snag such world-class musicians?
It's a really good question, and the answer, short version of the answer, is that we come from a region where no one else is doing what we do. So when we are creating these pieces of theatre, it's very easy for us to get support from sort of, it's not as high up as like government or state or politicians, but the arts are treated in a very different way in the Middle East, because they just don't really have an arts industry in the same way we do. So if there is an organization like the Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra, and Dana is the only person in Qatar writing a musical, the people who fund the orchestra are very happy to make that connection, because it benefits everybody. It gives the orchestra a reason to play with a West End cast. It gives the composer an opportunity to have her musical recorded by the National Orchestra, who are otherwise sitting at home during COVID, not doing anything. And the whole thing is like a good advertisement for what's possible in the Middle East, in the arts scene. Because, you know, the Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra, which is part of the Qatar Foundation, their whole thing is that they want people from around the world to go there and use that orchestra and record shows there, record film scores there, do concerts there, to increase the artistic output of the region. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we were writing shows that were set in New York or Europe about people falling in love and writing rom-coms and stuff, we'd be like, how many musicals are there set in America or Europe, in New York or Paris or London? Like, we'd be at the bottom of the queue of about 50 musicals, and people will be going, well, what makes your one special? Whereas nobody else is doing the kind of the niche area that we're writing about. So that's been our way.
In that authentic sound.
See, I was thinking it was possibly even a case of going, oh, well, you know, we're doing the story of Rumi, and they're sitting there going, sign us up.
It's a question. I mean, we do go through long processes of thinking we've got funding and sponsorship, and people pulling out because they don't really care that much about the arts. They're still, you know, they're still always in the Middle East going to prioritize construction and cars and tourism and these other things. We're still quite low down the pecking order. So sometimes it does go wrong, and you think you've got some funding, and then you have to start from scratch and get those pitch documents made again and go and meet with other people. But eventually there is always someone who believes in it, because no one else is doing it, and the idea of putting Gibran or Rumi or people like them on the stage and presenting our culture in a positive way in the West is seen as quite an attractive thing to get involved in. So I think the message to anyone who is thinking of writing a musical and wants to get an album made and all that sort of stuff is, write something that no one else is writing about, and write it in a way that no one else is doing it. And then you're not going to be in a queue. You're not going to then be waiting for your time to break through all the others, you know?
Exactly. Like I keep saying on this show, you do not need someone else to pave the path for you. Do it. Bingo. Just go out and do it. Just go out and do it, kids. And Dana, there isn't a whole line of female Qatari composers. She is the first. She went out and did it, and that is admirable in itself. That is trailblazing. I think a lot of people are investing too much in what's come before them. Just go out and do it. Just do it.
100%.
You don't need. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's the best lesson every artist can give to younger people, is to just do it.
And that's why we did the album. That's why we did the album first, because it's like, if the show doesn't happen, at least you still made something. You still
Yeah.
you have a record. You got everyone in the studio. You gave Middle Eastern musicians and artists employment. You created something, and then if the show doesn't happen, it might happen in 10 years time because there's an album. Someone in 10 years might go, oh, I want to put that on its feet.
Or the next musical that you write, because everyone is a practice. So you get better and better each time.
Totally, exactly.
With everything you write, everything you do.
Yeah.
So
I think this really illustrated how opposite Rumi and Death Clock are. Where you know, Death Clock is literally one dude by himself in a room writing the whole thing himself. If it fails, it doesn't get off the ground, he's only really disappointed one person. Whereas, you know, you're on the side of, you've got a whole orchestra in Qatar, and then I assume you're saying with the staging now, you've got possibly a much smaller orchestra, but another orchestra has to then learn that and rehearse that, and there's man hours and there's hundreds of people involved in going from recording the album to staging it. So if it if it doesn't get off the ground, there's the pressure of the hundreds of people involved. I'm sorry, it's all on you.
You're completely right. That's it. So you've got to just embrace each step of the journey and take it for what it is without worrying too much about the end game. Because especially, come on, we've all just lived through a pandemic as well, where it's like you can do all the work you want, you can spend all the money that you have, and you can have everything lined up, but then out of the blue, it's just like, sorry, it's cancelled, it's not happening anymore. So I think that's another reason why we wanted to do the album too, because that felt like safe. It felt like we can do this even if COVID goes on for years and years and years. Like, we can still go in the studio and record an album, even if we have to go in one at a time. We can still tell a story, we can still put this music out there. So one step at a time is the other thing that I have to keep telling myself, like, just enjoy it.
There are no guarantees. Also, there's no definitive edition of anything.
No, exactly.
So the CD that is out there now, that'll sound different when it goes out on stage in this semi-concert, and then if you do get a full-scale production, there'll be changes made again, and it'll keep growing. And I really do wish it all the best.
Thank
and
you.
Wish you all the best for your career, and thank you so much for joining us.
I've had a really great time.
Yeah, good. I hope the puns weren't too awful.
They were great. Thank you.
Yeah, and
what was that one you said in your intro? Something Persian?
Persianality.
I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You did.
Oh, that's it.
Anyways, where can people find you on the socials?
So they can find me on Twitter, which is just my name, Nadeem Naman, and Instagram, and Nadeem Naman Actor, all one word.
Awesome.
I have a YouTube channel, but I haven't uploaded anything onto it for a couple of years. A few things on there.
Researching your episode, and I put on that, it said Phantom Medley, so I didn't really know what to expect, what songs it would be. Halfway through it, you switched over to Music of the Night, and I didn't realize it. I just burst into tears. I'm like, fuck this guy. Look, this is fucking beautiful. This is fucking gorgeous. Oh my God. And I'm so jealous.
I'm sorry I made you cry, / glad it did the job.
Anyways, no, that's far too personal for the show, so I will cut that out. And obviously we've got Rumi coming up on the West End for 2 nights in a semi-concert version, so we'll put this out a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think tickets on sale now.
To make sure, tickets are on sale.
Yeah.
Yes, please go, and then message us on Twitter at Thrash and Treasure and tell us what you thought about it, because we are very too mighty jealous that all these shows, all these guests we have on this show, neither me or Evan can go and see, because I'm in lockdown and he lives in the middle of fucking nowhere. So that helps everything. But anyways,
we are so far away. COVID hasn't got here yet.
No, that's true. Whereas here, it's eating us alive. Anyways, for you at home, you take care, and we shall see you next tea time. Hooroo!
Thank you very much. I had a really great time.